This is Discussions of Truth with Citizens Media News. I am sitting here with Kaysha and Lauren, and we've got some good things to talk about. I've had the pleasure of speaking with them for a little bit. And Kaysha, how about we start with you? You guys have a podcast?
Yeah, so my name is Kaysha Richardson. I'm an American Indian born in Canada. I created a podcast called the Karis Project because my father and I, our family was trafficked in early 2020. He's a mechanical engineer that it pioneered research exposing the improper contagion mitigation that was used for election interference and bioterrorism in both Canada and the United States, ultimately treason. I worked for a maximum security prison for the criminally insane, the provincial government in Canada, and I was tortured at my place of employment for helping him put out this research. I filed official OH&S complaints, which is the same as OSHA laws here in the United States. I'm an American Indian, so after that I fled to the United States for safety, but I presented my dad's research to the border agents in America at Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry on October 1st of 2020. Pretty much the way my father explains it to me is the CDC changed the guidelines 20 years ago. That created a critical weakness in the infrastructure of Canada and the United States. It made it weak to biological attack, and that was an act preparatory to levying war, which was instantly treason. So everything after, obviously, a problem as well. I gave that research to the border agents. They arrested me, took all my travel documents, including my native tribal card, tried to destroy them, gave me over to immigration, who drove me to Pahrump, Nevada, where I spent 7 months in a maximum security military and immigration prison. And immigration tried to deport me multiple times back to Canada, but the Canadian government sent them a letter saying, she's an Indian. Why, American Indian, why is she in immigration prison already, to begin with? Because I have no previous crimes or convictions or charges anywhere in any country in the world. And of course, I worked for a vulnerable sector of the government, and I'm sovereign on both sides of the border as an American Indian. So they were like, release her. And so immigration, they released me, but they put me on a supervision program, American supervision program, meaning they had me on surveillance tracking device, as well as under an American citizen that they had to approve me to live with. I couldn't leave my house at certain times of the day. I couldn't leave the city without permission. I couldn't move to a different home without permission. And so the people that they paroled me to ended up trafficking me around the States the last 3 years, drugging me, sexually assaulting me, beating me, holding me at gunpoint, putting things online while I was drugged, and those things were happening for financial gain. And so this was all done to suppress the evidence of the treason that my father had conducted in his research. As well, the research he conducted was used in Canada to file high treason and human trafficking complaints with the RCMP, which is like the FBI in Canada. And they're trying to work cross-border with the law enforcement here, because the law enforcement has not been working with them. There's been dual citizens of both Canada and the United States involved in the trafficking, and the law enforcement here in the United States have not been cooperating with the RCMP, like the FBI in Canada. So they're trying to do that. We have gotten it to different people in Congress, this research and information. My father's a published researcher, and his work sits in the Library of Congress. It's protected by United States copyright. So that's some of the work that we're doing. We ended up coming across, actually, Lauren online. Her story was brought to my attention because her children have been trafficked as well, and herself. And so I connected with her. I had her on our podcast, the Karis Project, and we started working together from there. And I ended up trying to come to court to advocate for her as a witness to some of the events that had happened, and went with her to the FBI to file some documents and the local law enforcement, because she used my father's research to file to get protection against what was happening to her children. And she can kind of go into some of that.
Yeah, so I'm Lauren Cupp, and I'm from Indiana. My daughter was molested for 6 years, and she was sent to a forensic interview place that was not certified to do the forensic interview. The man violated the protective order that was granted based upon a preponderance of evidence that a sex offense had occurred by filming my child and my nephew. And so when he violated the order, when that happened, the wife actually spit in my face and said that we weren't filming your daughter.
So you knew who this was?
He was a neighbor in my parents' neighborhood. So he has 2 little girls, and my daughter was best friends with his little girls.
Oh, wow.
So I went over to ask him to stop filming. She spit in my face. They ended up charging me with an A misdemeanor and put a warrant out for my arrest 16 days later, even though the police recommended no charges be filed, and they didn't take the report for the violation of my daughter's protective order. So then that dug me down a rabbit hole of why are the police covering up this crime, and why was there just a protective order, granted a civil protective order. So I found out there was no court minutes for this protective order. The protective order was just mailed. He didn't have to register as a sex offender. There's other children in the neighborhood that are being molested.
So have they, and I don't mean to stop you.
No.
Have they investigated any of this? They haven't
So
charged
the
him?
only person that spoke to him was Department of Child Services. The lead investigator, Mark Wagner, with the Cumberland Metropolitan Police Department, Hancock County, Indiana. He told me basically there's nothing we can do. The best thing that you can do is file a protective order, because likely he's going to hire an attorney and he's going to come in, and the likelihood of him speaking is pretty unlikely. Well, you still have to, that's like a murderer getting away with not talking to a murder suspect just because they hire an attorney. So he never talked to him, only Department of Child Services did. So he called me and said, look, the best thing we can do is file a protective order. And I'm like, look, take him for no trespassing. There's witnesses that saw him chasing my daughter and her friend. And he's like, there's nothing we can do. So I was done at that point. I'm like, Mom, you can file the protective. I was just done. And so the protective order was violated almost a year to the date on my daughter's birthday. And the same 2 officers that witnessed the forensic interview were the same 2 officers that denied to take the violation report for the protective order, then tried to prosecute me on an A misdemeanor for the wife spitting in my face. So then that led to ultimately on May 29th of 2023, he was unmarked officer, plain clothes, came up to me at the park with my kids. I was taking them to go swimming, and I was in a bikini, and we were in our neighborhood park, and he didn't say anything to me, he just said, hey, and my daughter looked at me like fear of God, and I'm like, look, let's calm down, let's just walk home, because I didn't know who it was. And so it turns out it was a police officer. He came back with 22 men, armed men, with an AR-15 2 feet away from my head, and a barking dog, a canine unit, a foot away from my head. They took me to the hospital, and they put me in the front seat of the cop car. I had to beg them to take me to the hospital. They drugged me and told me if I did not give them a statement, they were going to put my kids in foster care. And so after, I don't remember because I was going in and out of consciousness what I said or didn't say on the interview. And I don't remember the ride to jail either. So I was incarcerated for 30 days. They transported me illegally on a warrant that was actually expired. And then I finally got out on bond, on a $5,000 bond on an A misdemeanor. And then the child molester is still walking free. I've reported it to the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, you name it, the FBI. Then I uncovered, in the meantime, another child sex trafficking ring in Evansville, Indiana. And I started exposing that, and DCS started coming after me even worse. And they took my kids on May 29th, so they've been with Child Protective Services, made wards of the state.
So I'm not sure if some of our viewers are aware or not about this situation with, some people call it the Department of Child Safety, DCS. DCS, I know they changed it when they got in Arizona where I live. They changed it to Department of Child Safety. It was called Child Protective Services, but they got in a lot of trouble because judges were literally taking children and unfairly removing from their parents in not a fair due process. Got in a lot of
That's
trouble,
exactly what's happening.
All of a sudden, we're going to change names. Now we're the Department of Child Safety. Same thing, same tactics. Okay, let's not forget up north in Arizona, we had 12 CPS or DCS ladies wearing pink shirts that says legal kidnappers on the back of their shirts. Now, they were removed or whatever, but they said they thought they were being funny. Or, it was on the news. Seriously, look it up in Arizona. Legal DCS workers wear legal kidnapper shirts. You'll find it. You'll find the shirts. It's kind of more like a smack in the face. I'm sorry, but no matter what, if you lose your kids or having kids taken away, this is the scariest time in your life. It's not like losing your house. You can replace a house. You cannot replace children. This is very serious.
And
so
the trauma does not go away.
You know, and you now believe that this, what's going on with this DCS situation is them trying to traffic your children. Is that what you ultimately believe?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, let's be clear though, as of right now, our kids are with somebody that can we say that? Can we say that part? That at least you know who they are. They're not
right. I know who they are.
Dungeon, as far as you know.
Right.
That's the good part. So.
But
I
the
don't want
state
viewers
still,
to panic
right?
and
The
think,
state still makes money every day that they're out of the home.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. There is absolutely a
financial gain, regardless whether they're with family or someone else.
And that's actually the definition of trafficking: is a monetary gain in exchange for a human being, whether it be working. Okay, human trafficking has many forms.
Absolutely.
Just a financial compensation for a human being is the definition of trafficking. Now, we understand that there are some instances where children absolutely are removed from monsters. We're grateful for those types of things, but we have over-incentivized this. We have given the authority to people that they are not even deeming fit.
No, the Child Protective Service lady had meth charges.
Yeah.
That I found. To remove my kid, she has meth charges.
You see what I'm saying? Like, we have to, would you agree, we have to hold these workers to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
Because they're being trusted with the ultimate, the ultimate
outcome and your child. Yeah.
I mean, how do you call it? I wouldn't call them a prized possession, but this is your pride and joy. This is your world. They're in charge of your world. Sorry, I was struggling for the world because,
Right.
What do you call your child? The world. They're in charge of your world right now. Literally, what they're going to do is going to define your life going forward and the child's life going forward.
And they use the family court system to isolate people, and that's what they did when Kaysha came into the courtroom. And it's so unconstitutional because she should have been able to come in as a witness, and the same judge presiding over the criminal case was also presiding over the family matter, and the judge refuses to recuse herself.
It's actually worse than that.
Yeah.
So what actually happened is the officers created the circumstances to facilitate the destruction and further financial and sexual exploitation of Lauren and her children. Because what happened is they violated her rights under the Convention Against Torture. They tortured her. What they did was bring an officer to speak to her unannounced, without any officer clothing, didn't identify himself. He had an unmarked car. He was threatening Lauren and her children. And then he left. He came back with 22 male officers, had guns to her head, a dog barking, saying that he's going to kill her. I'll kill you right now, VITCH and all this. Then they take Lauren in her bikini in front of her kids, all of this display in front of her children. They take her in the front car of the police, they drug her, and then they start interrogating her, telling her, oh, we're going to take your children if you don't answer these questions. So they've now drugged her and intimidated her and tortured her in order to steal her children, and that in and of itself is trafficking. And so her children have not received any victim services, neither has she. She's not getting any protection, but they're protecting the pedophile who's done this,
Right.
and the wife who's assaulted her by spitting in her face. And now they've created the circumstances for her to flee from her home by furthering the persecution. Like she said, we went to court the other day, not too long ago, and I went in as a witness and an ADA for her, and to speak to some of the things that I've witnessed, apprised with what's going on with her and her children. And the judge started threatening me. I told the judge, you need to recuse yourself because there's conflict of interest in which you have a vested interest. And she said, I'm going to arrest you. I said, well, I'm leaving. Well, she told me I had to leave, and I said, I'm leaving. So then when I got up to leave with Lauren, she said that if you leave, you're going to be arrested. So I said, all right, I'm calling the police. So in the courthouse, I called the police. I said, I'm an American Indian. I'm a victim of human trafficking, and Lauren and her children are victims of human trafficking. And this judge is criminally intimidating us by threatening us to arrest us for being witnesses to the crime she's committed. And Lauren had presented the evidence of treason and election interference and trafficking that my father had he pioneered. And the judge refused to actually, and was listed as one of the people under the complaint. And so we ended up having to leave the court the next day. The same judge who was a part of the family hearing was a part of the criminal hearing and locked us out of the criminal court so that Lauren couldn't speak in there, or myself. And they made a ruling.
No court hearing.
And we called the police again and made a report. And they made a ruling in her absence, and actually the sheriff who took our information said he would be sending the information through Interpol to the RCMP and the FBI and local detachment. I don't know if he actually did it, but that's what he said, and we have that all documented, of course. But pretty much, this is torture, and this is why they ended up doing what they did with the elections, because they were after the children to begin with. The COVID and the elections, it was all done that way so that they could come around and steal people's children and destroy their families. This is how they're able to do what they're doing to Trump right now. And if everyone would have dealt with my father's documents on October 1st of 2020 that outlined the election interference, the bioterrorism, the treason, and the child trafficking, January 6th would have never happened, and what we're seeing happen to Trump today would have never happened because they would have been caught for their crimes. Most people don't understand engineering. The RCMP has been working with my dad for the last year, and they say that they always ask if he's ex-law enforcement because they love the way he's outlined the documents. So, people really need to look at what's going on from the beginning and see that this is not an isolated issue with what's going on with Lauren. Because I didn't know her from Adam until a couple months ago when her situation was brought to my attention. And it shows that this was the ideology present and the motive for what was going on, because it's happening to American citizens, Native Americans born in Canada on both sides of the border. So they're pushing this out to everybody.
Yeah. One thing, so for me, one thing that I've noticed is these types of things that might be so, this situation that you're describing are probably so beyond what people could even comprehend right now, right? But you can't put it past anything because we've seen what's been going on in the country. A country that would unleash a virus on the world intentionally to kill people and to cause mass panic and shut down, the world to gain, an election in the leader of the free world in America. These are the same people that are doing these things. So when just because it's a story maybe that is like, just because the things that have happened, that's what like the deep state is these actors, these bad actors that are in here that are absolutely corrupt. They've gotten into the police department, they've gotten into the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, the DHS, you name it. There are people who have infiltrated every part of this government, from the community levels, like DCS, all the way up to the top, to the White House. And there's people that want to do bad and cause chaos in people's lives, and people are probably like, whoa, this is like, how do I comprehend all of what was just said? Because it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's freaking crazy. But two women with similar stories on how their situations were handled when came in contact with law enforcement agencies. People they're swearing to protect you. And I know a lot of Americans feel like, I used to trust the FBI. Now look, I used to trust, that my elected official was somewhat, in
a good standing.
I used to think that, so in that same context, you have to look at it in the same light. Like, why would people do these kind of things? Why would they do all of the stuff that they're doing? They have an ulterior
they're making money
that
too.
They're able to control the masses of the people, and they find people, they isolate them, and they cause fear and panic.
Yeah.
And we know that that is the work of the devil, to cause fear and chaos to the point where you just shut up, you close down, and you go away.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you want to resume any kind of life, because I'm sure when you get out there and tell some people this, they're probably like, you guys are freaking crazy. I'm sure maybe you've heard somebody say that before.
Right.
I hope not.
Right.
Well, people are like that, which
stories.
is, yes, exactly. People are like that sometimes, and sometimes it's their own cowardice, because sometimes they understand, but they're just like, oh, you're crazy, because they don't want to deal with it. On the flip side, we have all the evidence, which is, by God's grace again, because most people don't get the evidence. We have the recording, the audio, the video. People have confessed to the crimes that were involved in the trafficking, like confessed to the sexual assaults and all these other things. Well, the people who immigration put me in the hands of were known to the police and had egregious criminal history that I was not aware of until the police got involved. So, a lot of people understand what's going on is going on to some degree. They may not know the bigger picture, but they're scared. Because like you said, if they make it so if you speak up, they're going to target you, isolate you, they're going to do what they did to us. And not everybody makes it out.
But you women have taken this and you've decided, I'm going to find strength through this. I'm going to empower. Because you know what? I've heard of other women going through this.
Oh, it's like story after story. I saw something that said if you're taking your child to the hospital, take your attorney.
Yeah, honestly, and it's horrible. And I watched a woman who we fought for down at the Capitol. She was coming and telling us all her story too, because she was desperate. This is her child, and they're literally medically.
They levied a child against.
They're medically taking away. I don't know what the word's called. They're taking away her kid.
Yeah,
she's the one who brought her child to the hospital.
Yep.
Something's going on with his stomach or something, and they're saying,
they blame the parent.
Yep. This is intentional. Blah blah blah. And she's like, "What are you talking?" And I know it's causing. It causes mass hysteria in your mind for a while. It does because it's so hard with trauma. The trauma that it creates, the post-traumatic stress syndrome, is real, and that's exactly how post-traumatic stress syndrome occurs. Is when there's just so much, emotional trauma on the brain. It's too much, and it creates this sense of panic. And she was absolutely like, I knew it was really just, it was breaking her down inside.
It does,
So I'm just glad that you guys are coming forward and saying, you know what, I'm not scared of you guys. I'm gonna find strength through this, because there's other people, mothers, young women, people that are experiencing this. And even if it just reaches one viewer who's like, I can relate and I can identify, I hope that your stories will inspire them to not give up.
Yes.
And that's what's important.
Yes.
Well, it's only the grace of God and my father, 100%, because a lot of people don't make it out, and especially not with capacity. A lot of people do get very overwhelmed, and I think that's why they isolate a lot of women and children, because they don't want them to have the protection of their fathers or their husbands, and they cause a lot of dissension within the family so that they can target them and make them vulnerable. And so, I'm really glad from the beginning that I had my dad who's really looking out for me, because if not, I would have been probably screwed in more ways than one. But he's been able to really compartmentalize things, and he handles things in a very diplomatic manner. He's very intelligent, so I'm grateful for that. But he puts God first and has always showed me that courage and trusting in God is the best way to go, and he'll protect you and make up the difference. And I've seen that to be true, and I don't fear any day that, oh, I might die today.
Right.
To me, in my mind, if it happens, it happens. I could care less. It's like I've done what God has asked me to do, and so whatever happens, it's inconsequential.
That is a testimony and a true conviction, and you wouldn't just hear that from somebody. Like, that's not something that somebody says every day. That if I die today, I'm okay. Like, do any of you feel like that? Do any of you? I mean,
I
like,
do.
honestly, no, because of your situation,
Yes.
you literally have to.
You have to think,
that you
like,
speaking out could ultimately cause your accidental death.
It's
You know?
not literally,
It's not
literally,
like
you're right. Yes,
It's
all
not fear.
related, but yeah.
It's not fear, it's just understanding that there is a certain risk that's associated with what you're doing. But it's in my mind, it's like, okay, well, if that's what happens, then God decided that that day is my final day. God is ultimately the one who chooses, and he's going to protect me until I'm done doing what I need to do in this life. And so it doesn't matter, because my relationship with God, I'm going to heaven anyways at the end. When you serve God and you have a relationship with him, you're saved. You're going to heaven to meet Jesus anyways. So, you know, to me, it's inconsequential. Yeah, there's no death. So I mean, ultimately, and this world is so evil. I'm not depressed. I'm not sad. There are moments where, you know, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. And you're a human. You feel things. You can't. It's like if someone punched you in the face, you're gonna feel it. You can't deny your feelings, but I'm not perpetually sad, like, oh my God, my life.
Stuck in drowning in it.
Yeah.
Allowing it to overcome you.
Yeah, so you're kind of,
that.
yeah, everything's
they're
very,
in the moment. They're angry in the moment.
yeah, you feel like, yeah.
God
You got officers all around you with guns.
angry.
Right.
He said be slow to anger. He never said it was a sin. Okay.
Right.
Because even Jesus
be angry and
was
sin not.
angry.
Right.
Yeah.
When he went and flipped those coin tables over, that was an act of him showing his displeasure with what was going on. And in a sense, he was angry with their turning the Lord's house into a den of thieves, he said.
Yeah.
You know? He was displeased with them. We can express that. And I'm glad that you guys have God and that you guys have found the faith that keeps going forward. So, you know, what's next for you guys? What are you guys?
Well, we've been filing so we've connected with a bunch of tribes here in the United States, as well as some congressmen. Like I said, my father had filed some high treason and human trafficking complaints with the FBI in Canada, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They've been actively working with him the last year, some pretty good guys. And we filed into the 4th Circuit just recently here in the United States. We're going to continue to file some things in court. My father has actually made a complaint package for each of the states within the United States, so that wherever you are, you can take that complaint package, attach it to anything that you've experienced from the crimes exacerbated during the pandemic, and file it to try and get justice. We have to create a connection, a web of connections, so that they can really understand what's going on, because right now they're trying to isolate people and make it seem like just isolated events. They're not. And so people really need to understand the motive, and that happens from, you know, I guess connecting all the dots with many people. So there's also people in the UK, Canada, and Australia, Asia, the Caribbean, who are taking my dad's research to file complaints in their countries. Whatever country you're in, engineering is engineering. It's math, it's science, it's all the works. So it's going to work regardless. Just reach out to us. We'll help you out.
Where can they find you after you let them?
Yeah, you can find us at the Karis Project on Twitter, Rumble, BitChute. That's Karis, K-A-R-I-S, the Karis Project. You can also find the packages for that on our website at dsrkarisconsulting.com. And you can send us an email for humanitarian things at unity@dsrkarisconsulting.com. And yeah, like I said, any of the crimes exacerbated from the COVID pandemic, if you've experienced forced jabs, a death in the family, your kids were trafficked, your house is stolen, anything like that, unlawful imprisonment, you lost your election because of fraud, reach out to us, we'll help you. On the family level, I don't have any personal children, but my little sister, she's 4 now, she was stolen at 16 months, so I can't imagine only what Lauren is going through and other people who are experiencing the same, but we can also give you a voice on our podcast to talk about these things, because mainstream media is not doing it, they're lying.
With that, you guys, I thank you guys so much for being on. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.